Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Coming up in the next hour. Tensions escalate again in Taiwan Strait as China launches joint air-sea patrols and military exercises around Taiwan Island. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meet, says the nation is leveraging technology to transform governance. India and the World Health Organization launch the Global Initiative on Digital Health. In Spain and England, two European heavyweights will play the Women's World Cup final on Sunday. Chinese forces conducted naval and air power drills around Taiwan in an apparent warning to Taiwan's Vice President William Lai after his recent visit to the United States. The drills also come soon after the US President Joe Biden held a trilateral summit with leaders from South Korea and Japan in Camp David. Mihir Makuri puts these actions into context.
Muscle flexing on the high seas. China's naval and air power on display around Taiwan. The immediate provocation for such a drill is to send a serious warning to Taiwan's Vice President William Lai for cozying up to the United States. William Lai is in pole position to become Taiwan's next president. He has for long been an advocate of practical Taiwanese independence. He returned from Paraguay via the United States on Friday. The PLA's exercises pinpointed and intercepted sea and air-moving targets. Taiwan's defense ministry condemned the drills, vowing to dispatch appropriate forces in response. But the ordinary Taiwanese resident seems unperturbed by the apparent Chinese provocation.
Although Taiwan is being officially recognized in the international community, we are important because we have a few top global companies such as TSMC. Taiwan not has quite a good reputation, so I think China will not attack us just like that.
While the drills may be directed towards Taiwan, their importance is not lost at a time when US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, and South Korean President Yoon pledged to deepen military and economic ties and also jointly condemned Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, though Biden chose to play it down.
Not to say we don't share concerns about the economic coercion or heightened tensions caused by China, but this summit was really about our relationship with each other and deepening cooperation across an entire range of issues that went well beyond just the immediate issues we raised. It was about more peaceful and prosperous Indo-Pacific, a region, quite frankly, that would benefit everyone living there and around the world if we get it right.
While Taiwan's leader, William Lai, pledges to be a practical worker for Taiwan's independence, opinion is divided among Asian analysts too about how much Japan and South Korea should be antagonistic towards a rising China. Perhaps they too should err on the side of caution.
The
US is only using Japan as a means to confront Russia, the DPRK and China, letting Japan take the hit while the US itself can get away unharmed. Therefore, the alliance will be advantageous to the US, but no good for Japan.
The PLA Eastern Theater Command's air and sea patrols take place notwithstanding. Mihir Makri for DD India.
Well, Taiwan is a self-governing democracy that Beijing says is part of the People's Republic of China to be united with the mainland by force if necessary. These latest military exercises are seen as a response to the trilateral summit between the leaders of the United States, Japan and South Korea, and also two brief stopovers in the US by Taiwan's Vice President while traveling to and from Paraguay, where he attended a presidential inauguration. DD India's Andrew Wood reports from Hong Kong.
President Xi Jinping has given the People's Liberation Army, the military, a target of 2030 to be ready to invade Taiwan militarily, if necessary, in order to unite Taiwan with the mainland of China. Now, there's still 7 years to go. The military at the moment really doesn't have the capacity to be able to do that. It could certainly make a good go, probably, of attacking Taiwan if necessary, but the idea of an amphibious invasion across at least 100 kilometres of sea is still well beyond the capabilities, probably, of the People's Liberation Army. So even if they do build up the armaments, the ships, the amphibious assault vessels and so on, ready for 2030, they've still got to practice an awful lot in order to learn about fighting in such a way. Remember, the People's Liberation Army has not really fought a war. It hasn't got a lot of combat experience. China likes to point out that it hasn't fought a war since 1979, and that was against Vietnam, and it was actually over the South China Sea, and Vietnam beat China. China doesn't like to remember that bit. So we don't know how good the armed forces would be if they tried to invade Taiwan. All we know is that they've got to do an awful lot of practice. And it's quite a good idea to sort of say that this practice, these exercises around Taiwan, preparing for an invasion, or perhaps more likely a blockade, by saying that this was a way of warning Taiwan whenever Taiwan does something that that Beijing disapproves of, like William Lai visiting the United States on his way to and from Paraguay. Then it just keeps this in the mind of both the Chinese people to show that the government is serious about its promise that it wants to unify Taiwan with the mainland by force if necessary, and also keeps Taiwan on its feet as well. Sometimes the idea might be just to keep running these exercises. The longer and the more frequently that they're run, then the more that Taiwan is tired and exhausted by the whole process and may just even politically give in at some point in the future. Andrew Wood in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
We'll discuss this story in the second half of our program, but moving on now. South Africa is all set to host the 15th edition of the Brics Summit in Johannesburg, beginning Tuesday. Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, would be attending the summit, meeting in person.
BRICS represents the group of major emerging world economies, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The theme of this year's summit is BRICS and Africa Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be representing India at the BRICS Leaders Summit. This visit of Prime Minister Modi to Johannesburg will be watched closely in diplomatic circles for two reasons. One, his interventions at the Leaders Summit here in Johannesburg, especially on how he proposes a greater role for developing countries in the global economic and political order, given that that is one of the key priorities of India, of its G20 presidency, even as it prepares to hold the Leaders Summit next month in Delhi. The second would be the much talked about meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, if that happens, because the two sides have not been able to resolve the flashpoints in eastern Ladakh, even at the 19th military commanders meeting. Prime Minister Modi will also engage with fellow world leaders from BRICS and invited countries. BRICS 2023 will take forward deliberations on key priority areas that include developing partnerships towards climate change initiatives, transforming education and skills development for future, unlocking opportunities through African Continental Free Trade Area, strengthening post-pandemic recovery and 2030 agenda on sustainable development goals, promoting multilateralism with meaningful participation of women in peace processes.
BRICS represents a partnership of leading emerging economies that are providing leadership and momentum to global growth and sustainable development, a vision for a multilateral world which is equal, just and creates space for the priorities of the global south.
The BRICS group accounts for more than 40% of the world population and about 26% of the global economy. Amritpal Singh and Shubhendu Ghosh reporting for DD India from Johannesburg.
Well, our correspondent Amritpal Singh now joins us live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Amrit, BRICS Africa outreach, BRICS Plus, you know, it's an expanded agenda. How different is this summit going to be?
Well, this summit, which is being hosted by South Africa, Mark, obviously during the presidency of South Africa, Africa is trying to push the bloc for greater cooperation with not just Africa, but the whole Africa, not just South Africa, but the whole African continent, because South Africa sees itself as the gateway to the rest of the African continent. Of course, the other BRICS members are interested in, increasing bilateral trade with the African continent and its resultant geopolitical or strategic benefits. From India's standpoint, for example, the agenda of the Global South plays out in a major way here. So the focus of Africa is essentially to reform multilateralism, to use the grouping for increased trade with South Africa and the rest of the African continent, and thirdly, achieving the sustainable development goals as fast as possible, because this is what economies, especially like South Africa, therefore, Africa Plus or the focus on Africa at this point.
Indeed. Amrit, so what are India's priorities at the meeting, and how does South Africa's chair agenda actually reflect the G20 Global South agenda, which India has been promoting as the G20 president?
Well, India's priorities, Mark, are very, very clear. As you rightly say, that Global South is cooperation amongst the Global South. The concerns, priorities of the Global South are factored in the global narrative. Are the priorities of India at G20. And India, when Prime Minister Modi intervenes, is expected to bring this up, because these are the biggest emerging economies of the world. And in fact, countries like China and India are the new growth engines of the world, even as the world goes through recession. And the other economies like the South African economy, though it's a much smaller economy, holds and Brazil hold the promise of greater economic revival. Russia, given its isolation, would want the grouping to be one expanded. Whether or not it comes through at this meeting is a question, because all countries are not on the same page when it comes to expansion of the BRICS grouping. But apart from that, India's priorities be it on climate change, be it on reform of multilateral institutions, making them more inclusive, achieving sustainable development goals, clearly are the priorities of the BRICS. So the transition from the South African presidency of the BRICS to the Indian G20 under India's presidency is a very natural process which the Prime Minister would be utilizing this forum for.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for joining us from Johannesburg with that update. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi tells a G20 ministerial meeting that they have a unique opportunity to build an inclusive, prosperous and secure global digital future. The Indian government unveils the green hydrogen standards. Electrolysis and biomass-based methods are defined. And India and the WHO launched the global initiative on digital health.
Tamil Nadu is breathtaking, Enchanting. Divine. Come, revel in the spirit of Tamil Nadu. The Thalaiva of States welcomes to an experience larger than life.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Muy
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu Hunud.
India.
Ma Hindi Hasti.
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meeting, and he said that India's digital transformation is powered by its unshakable belief in innovation and its commitment to speedy implementation. Aisha Khanam reports.
The G20 Digital Economy Ministers meet began in Bangalore on Saturday under the India presidency, with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressing the ministers of G20 nations, underlining the priority areas of digital public infrastructure, security in the digital economy, and digital skilling.
Our unique digital identity platform Aadhaar covers more than 1.3 billion of our people. We have used the power of the GEM Trinity, Jan Dhan bank accounts, Aadhaar, and mobile to revolutionize financial inclusion in India.
PM Modi also said India is driven by the spirit of inclusivity and leaving no one behind in transformation. PM Modi stated that India is an ideal testing lab for solutions.
Our online public procurement platform, the government e-marketplace, has brought transparency and probity into the process. The open network for digital commerce is democratizing e-commerce. Fully digitized taxation systems are promoting transparency and e-governance.
Prime Minister Modi said technology connected us like never before and ensured sustainable development for all. PM Modi also said the platforms like CoWIN app had ensured that we fight the pandemic collectively.
We offered our CoWIN platform for global good during the COVID pandemic. We have now created an online global public digital goods repository the India's tech. This is to ensure that no one is left behind, especially our brothers and sisters from the global south.
Three key areas selected by India's presidency are digital public infrastructure, security, and scaling digital skills with focus on conviction, commitment, coordination, and collaboration. With Aisha Khanum, Bureau Report, DD India.
India handed over the chairship of the G20 Digital Economy Working Group to Brazil, and the G20 Digital Economy Ministers began in Bengaluru under India's presidency. Three key areas selected by India's presidency were digital public infrastructure, security, and scaling digital skills. India's Information Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that geopolitics was kept out of the meeting and hence a consensus was reached on the focus areas in digital economy, digital public infrastructure and cybersecurity. All G20 countries also agreed on the importance of skilling.
We had absolute consensus during the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meeting on the concept and application of digital public infrastructure. We also had a lot of consensus on cybersecurity, where we all agreed that this is a problem that the entire world has to face together. This cannot be seen in isolation. On this, some very good principles were decided. The third big consensus was on skilling. Everybody realizes the fact that for inclusive growth, for digital inclusion, it's very important that we scale up and we expand the scope of skilling.
While speaking exclusively to DD India, India's Information Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnav lauded the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana. That's the scheme responsible for providing basic banking facilities to the underprivileged, and which now has in excess of 500 million bank accounts. The minister further added that the participants of the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meet admired the easy access of digital public infrastructure in India.
It's a very large number of people getting banking services, and this has been admired and appreciated by every participant in the G20 meeting. The ministers actually went out and experienced, many of them firsthand, how easy it is to use the digital public infrastructure in India. And that's why there was very good consensus. There was consensus that globally, the global south as well as other countries should adopt the DPI architecture for digitalizing their economy.
The World Health Organization and the G20 India presidency announced a new global initiative on digital health at the Health Ministers meeting in the western state of Gujarat. The G20 Health Ministers meeting in Gujarat saw the unanimous adoption of the outcome document. It reaffirmed the commitment of all G20 countries to continue strengthening the global health architecture. G20 nations committed to support the WHO's efforts to establish the Global Initiative on Digital Health. It will implement the WHO's Global Digital Health Strategy 2020 to 2025. The Indian government has notified the Green Hydrogen Standard for India. The standard has been issued by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and outlines emission thresholds. Electrolysis-based and biomass-based hydrogen production methods are included in the definition. After wide consultation, the Indian government defined green hydrogen as having a well-to-gate emission of not more than 2 kgs of CO2. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Power, shall be the nodal authority for accreditation of agencies for the monitoring, verification and certification of green hydrogen production projects. India now becomes one of the first few countries in the world to announce a definition of green hydrogen. Let's look at other stories making news. The total number of Jan Dhan accounts has crossed the 50 crore mark. That's the 500 million mark. The Finance Ministry said that out of these accounts, 56% of the accounts belong to women and 67% of the accounts have been opened in rural and semi-urban areas. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed happiness over the significant milestone in Jan Dhan accounts. In a social media post, Prime Minister Modi also expressed his delight at women holding more than half of these accounts at 56%. The Supreme Court of India has formed a special bench of Justices B.V. Nagarathna and Ujjal Bhuyan to hear a 25-year-old rape survivor's abortion appeal after the Gujarat High Court adjourned the matter multiple times. The new Supreme Court bench has ordered a fresh medical report of the applicant to be submitted by August 20. The Indian government has imposed 40% export duty on onions with immediate effect up to the 31st of December 2023. The decision comes as the government aims to improve the domestic availability of onions. Still to come on DD India News Hour. China's muscle flexing on the high seas. We'll tap into expert comments. Indonesia calls for more equitable distribution of investments into ASEAN at the Economic Ministers meeting in Jakarta. Ukraine asks Sweden for possible supply of Gripen jets to boost its air defenses.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Zari India.
Salam India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Muy
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu Hunud. India. Ma Hindi Hasti. Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Shagato to West Bengal, India's cultural epicenter. West Bengal invites you to share its richness, to be united as one family with one shared vision of building a better tomorrow.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Our top stories. Tensions escalate again in Taiwan Strait as China launches joint air-sea patrols in military exercises around Taiwan Island. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the G20 Digital Economy Ministers meeting and says that the nation is leveraging technology to transform governance. India and the World Health Organization launch the global initiative on digital health. And now going back to our story on increased Chinese drills around Taiwan, we are joined here by two guests. Let me introduce you to them. Dr. Roger Chifeng Liu is from the Flame University in Taiwan, and Dr. Rajan Kumar is from the School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Dr. Liu, let me start with you. The average person in Taiwan, according to our report, seems to be used to all this. They seem to think that nothing's going to really happen. Should the rest of the world also apply the same yardstick?
Yes, thank you very much, Mark, to see you again here. I'm in Taipei now, so I cannot feel anything regarding the tension or any warnings from the government regarding the military exercise that China has conducted over Taiwan. I think, like you said, they have been doing this for many times, but of course we have to pay attention to that. But I tend to interpret this military exercise conducted by China as a political signal and response from the Chinese side towards the recent development of Vice President Lai Ching-te or William Lai, who has visited the Central American allies that Taiwan has had in this area. I think they are trying to send a signal to Lai himself and to his supporters, as well as other candidates in Taiwan who is also participating in this presidential election, which is going to take place in Jan 2024. Well, this is like a two-pronged strategy. So at one time, they have created some kind of a war situation to tell the Taiwanese voters that if they make the wrong choice, quote unquote, they will face the war situation. And William Lai apparently is the person that the CCP or Chinese Communist Party doesn't want the Taiwanese to choose. So they do this military exercise to show this, to send this signal. So this is the major purpose of what they're doing for now.
Dr. Rajan Kumar, can Taiwan be subdued by force? What is the realistic scenario?
As far as the force difference between China and Taiwan is concerned, Chinese military is roughly 12 times bigger than the Taiwanese military. So if Taiwan has to be defended, it has to be supported by other countries, including United States. And of course, US is looking for alliance partner such as Japan and South Korea. But Taiwan alone cannot defend itself. The reason why this provocation took place, because as the Dr. Liu pointed out, that two immediate provocations from the Chinese perspective. One was the visit of the Vice President of Taiwan, William Lai, to United States. Sometime back, the Taiwanese President, Tsai Ing-wen, she also went to United States in March. And the second important development is the trilateral agreement between South Korea, Japan, and United States, which happened just now in Camp David. So these are the two important provocations, and China has adopted a very coercive tactics, not only in Taiwan Straits, but also in South China Sea. And it is trying to send a very clear message that it can apply force. And China, in the last few years, if you see, since 2016, China is very assertive. China is clearly trying to say that it can use force to unify Taiwan. So if Taiwan has to be defended, it has to have support from number of countries, United States, Japan, and also other countries in the world. Taiwan is a democracy, but there is a sense that, the US policy is also not very clear as far as Taiwan is concerned. Sometimes it says that it will come to the rescue and defense of Taiwan, but at other times it also says that it is not committed to defend Taiwan, and it also doesn't recognize Taiwan as in its official diplomacy. So these are some of the strategic ambiguities which are leading to very coercive tactics being used by China to threaten Taiwan.
So given that, then, Dr. Liu, should Japan and South Korea tread with caution as they are building their alliances with the United States? Some analysts say that it's pragmatic, for them to strengthen dialogue with China simultaneously.
Of course, we will have to do anything that diplomacy can do, right? But I think for now, Japan has upended its defense posture to increase its defense budget from 1% to 2%. So they are ready for that. And as for South Korea, the presence of China in the vicinity actually has been putting some strategic pressures. Especially, Beijing has been trying to create some kind of pressure through their few allies in Pyongyang. So, well, of course, I think Japan, Seoul, and Tokyo has to pay attention to. But I have to point out that I think the CCP, what they're going to do in the future, of course, we don't know. But if there is going to be a real military action, we will see some signals here or some traces that we have to follow, right? So they have to prepare, they have to mobilize, they have to concentrate their forces at the coastal areas if they are launching a large-scale attack. But military operations can be taken at different stages, at different shape and form. So what we are going to prepare or worry about is that they may have some kind of blockade operations that use their vessels or the aircraft carriers to surround Taiwan to create some kind of a blockade situation, to cut off the supply of Taiwan and create some kind of pressure from the inside to force the Taiwanese people to choose the candidate that they want, or to force the United States to show the United States and the Japanese allies that they cannot, when they try to come for the rescue, actually, they cannot do that. So we have to think about this more. And I think it is very important for India to prepare for that as well, because I remember Vijay Gokhale has pointed out that, well, Taiwan Strait actually is a vital area for India as well, because this is a vital connecting point for India's trade route to go through South China Sea to Japan and South Korea. And don't forget about this, we are developing our semiconductor capabilities.
Sure.
And
so
Taiwan
in fact,
is the powerhouse.
Let me just ask you a question there, Dr. Liu. I mean, how effective is Taiwan's economic strength in building an independent thought process then, and strengthening that with the help of, let's say, countries like India and the like?
You mean through the economic
yes, through your own economic
or...
strengths. And you talked about the semiconductor industry, other industries as well, the economic strength of Taipei itself.
Semiconductor-wise, two companies in Taiwan has been producing for more than 60% of the chips for all of the world. And this is what India needs, because we are picking up in fabless IC design and the design of AI and related algorithms and models. Well, India is very good at doing that.
Yes.
But what India is lack of is the production of the mature procedure chips or the advanced procedure chips. And this only Taiwan can do that. So India should make this as a grave security concern of India as well. And we have to take an initiative through Quad or other mechanisms to prevent this worse situation from happening.
Right. I'm running short of time, so let me get the last word in from Dr. Rajan. How should other major players in Asia, particularly India and ASEAN, be viewing all these developments?
I think, China has adopted three techniques. One is the coercive technique through military exercises, sending fighter bombs, surveillance, etc. The second China is also trying to prepare a situation where it can economically blockade Taiwan if needed. And third, it is also involved in some kind of cyber attacks happening very frequently by Chinese people on Taiwan. So if China needs to be countered, China has to be countered through diplomacy. War is not the situation which can be supported by any country. These are two big powers, and if China has also said that it will use the force, but at the same time, US also said that it might defend Taiwan when it comes to war kind of situation. So it is in the interest of the other countries not to allow this escalation to happen, and that can only happen if other countries like India, Japan, and Southeast Asian countries taken together, Western countries also, they put pressure on China not to engage in any kind of military activity. It has to be peaceful settlement of dispute. It cannot be coercive exercise by China, either in Taiwan or in South China Sea.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan Kumar from School of International Studies, JNU, and Dr. Roger Shifeng Liu from Flame University in Taiwan. Our next story. In India's Ladakh, 9 Indian Army soldiers lost their lives in an accident near Kayari town, and the troops were moving from Karu garrison to Kayari near Leh. The accident happened when their vehicle fell into a gorge. Many others were injured in the incident. The ASEAN tariff finders launched on Friday on the sidelines of the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting in Indonesia's city of Semarang. It is an online platform designed to support traders to maximize benefits from the conclusion or the upgradation of free trade agreements by ASEAN member states. The ASEAN Tariff Finder can help users to explore the markets of more than 160 countries. The tool is free. Meanwhile, Indonesia said that there is a need to ensure equity in investments in ASEAN countries, and investments should not flow into just one or a few member nations. In another development, the ASEAN Economic Ministers endorsed a visionary ASEAN strategy for carbon neutrality. It is designed to complement the ASEAN member states' national initiatives in meeting their respective contributions under the Paris Agreement. At least 7 people, including a 6-year-old child, were killed when a Russian missile struck Ukraine's historic city of Chernihiv, while 90 others were injured. Ukraine's Interior Ministry said that when the strike took place, people were on their way to church to celebrate a religious holiday. Chernihiv is a city of boulevards and centuries-old churches located about 145 kilometers north of the capital, Kiev. Russia has attacked Ukrainian cities far from the front line with missiles and drones. Meanwhile, Ukraine said that its military had shot down 15 of the 17 Russian drones in an overnight strike. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his government has begun discussions with Sweden about the possibility of giving Gripen fighter jets. Sweden has been aiding Ukraine's war efforts by supplying weapons.
We talked about another strong Swedish machine, Gripen fighter jets. This is Sweden's pride. I'm sure that the Gripens would better protect our freedom. Ukrainian pilots have already started test flights on Gripens.
Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Russian President Vladimir Putin met generals who are leading the war effort against Ukraine. Putin met the generals after the US had approved the transfer of Dutch and Danish F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. A suspected Palestinian shooting attack in the occupied West Bank killed 2 Israelis on Saturday, ambulance services spokesperson reported. Violence in the West Bank has worsened over the past 15 months with stepped-up Israeli raids, Palestinian street attacks and assaults by Jewish settlers on Palestinian villages. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has pardoned a number of prisoners, including prominent Egyptian activist Ahmed Douma. The state TV said on Saturday, Douma, a leading figure in a pro-democracy revolt that toppled the autocrat Hosni Mubarak in 2011, was sentenced in 2019 to 15 years in prison for rioting and attacking security forces. Still to come on DD India News Hour. A West African delegation is in Niger for talks with the junta. US, South Korea and Japan agree to deepen military ties amid China's worries. Two European heavyweights will play the Women's World Cup final on Sunday.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Watching DD India News Hour, I'm Mark Lynn. The West African main regional bloc ECOWAS has said that it had agreed to an undisclosed D-Day. This is for a possible military intervention to restore democracy in Niger if diplomatic efforts fail. The regional bloc stressed that it would not hold endless dialogue with the defiant junta. It follows a coup last month with a military junta now in control of the country. The ECOWAS bloc has a standby force ready for possible military intervention if diplomatic efforts fail. And Isaac Lucando now joins us from Dar es Salaam with more on the story. Isaac, is war imminent or is there still scope for dialogue? Apparently there's an ECOWAS delegation in Niger.
Well, what we know from ECOWAS is that they are still interested in dialogue. In fact, it is the preferred route to take. But whether or not this particular dialogue will yield any results remains the big question, because any previous attempts that have been made to talk to the military junta in Niger have failed. And so this particular delegation that has gone to Niger holds on its shoulders a very big task of achieving what previous delegations have not been able to achieve. And we know that from previous interviews given by activists who claim to be close to the military junta there, they seem to suggest that the only language that the military junta seems to understand is acknowledgement of its leadership in Niger, a key ingredient for any dialogue to continue and any gains to be made by ECOWAS. And so the question still remains a lot of uncertainty as to what direction this will take.
And how will this tension affect the rest of Africa in terms of stable democratic governments?
Well, this whole saga in Niger is a step backwards for Africa as a whole, not just the region of Western and Central Africa. The hope was, of course, that African states would be able to move forward, get some democratic gains and maybe some economic gains as well. But this obviously not only taints ECOWAS, but it also taints the African Union, which has been criticized for being very silent and not doing enough to quell such occurrences of coups, particularly in this region. And so it just doesn't affect the people of Niger, but also the rest of Africa, that as opposed to spending its time focusing on economic development, it has to focus on power struggles in this particular region, which has already enough to deal with on its plate.
Isaac, given what you're saying, how soon is D-Day in your assessment?
Well, from what analysts are saying, D-Day could be a few weeks off, maybe even a month off, because it is not as easy. It needs approvals, and this is the main legal and political hurdle that faces ECOWAS. Yes, about 11 countries within the ECOWAS system have said that they will contribute troops to be able to go into Niger, but those troops require approval from their respective countries. We know that Niger, which is expected to contribute the majority of those troops, does not have approval from its Senate, and in fact the Senate rather prefers to have dialogue more than send in troops. So that's going to take a while, if at all it will happen. And so that already puts that into weeks. And if you throw in the logistical issues that need to be overcome there, it might be a while before we see any military action on the ground. And I believe that the military junta is expecting this because Abdurrahman Chiani was in Ivory Coast leading a battalion there in 2003. So he understands how ECOWAS works. And he's, in fact, perhaps banking on such delays to be able to consolidate power in Niger.
We leave it there. Isaac Lucando, thanks very much for joining us from Dar es Salaam. Unprecedented climate events are increasing around the world. It has resulted in raging wildfires that caused massive destruction of lives and properties.
Fire and heavy smoke continue to rage in the western province of Canada. In the last 36 hours, the coastal province experienced powerful winds and dry lightning as a result of cold air mass mixing with accumulated hot air during the humid summer. This combination intensified ongoing wildfires and sparked additional blazes. An emergency has been declared in Canada's British Columbia. Situation in America's Hawaii is equally devastating as the death toll from the Hawaii wildfire keeps rising. Local residents have voiced their dissatisfaction with the sluggish government response.
I think that we need to become proactive in several regards. One, we need to be careful about letting the fire hazard build. And the other is, if you know a little bit about what happened in Lahaina, the water system broke down. If we were prepared.
Meanwhile, the Hawaii governor has assured the residents to investigate the matter.
I have ordered a comprehensive assessment of every detail of our response to the fires on Maui. We will get to the bottom of exactly how the fire started, how our emergency procedures and protocols need to be strengthened, and how we can improve our defenses to protect us in the future.
Spanish island of Tenerife also witnessed raging wildfire this week. It has burnt through nearly 4,000 hectares of vegetation, although no damages to property and livestock reported so far. Nupur Praveen for DD India.
Well, get ready for an epic showdown in the FIFA Women's World Cup final on Sunday. La Roja and the Lionesses, two powerhouse European teams, prepare to clash in Sydney. Spain notched up an eye-watering 17 goals in the tournament. The Lionesses have not lost a game in the tournament and notched up some impressive results. And Sweden beat Australia 2-0 to finish third in the FIFA Women's World Cup. With this, Sweden won the bronze medal match of the second World Cup in succession. And Fridolina Rolfo scored the opener with a first-half penalty, which was awarded after a VAR check on a trip inside the box. Kosovare Aslani then doubled the lead after the break with a classy finish from outside the box after a nice team move. Despite the defeat, this represents co-host Australia's best ever World Cup finish, as their efforts in this tournament have captured the hearts of their fans. World Humanitarian Day is observed every year on the 19th of August in a bid to save and protect lives around the world. A theme is dedicated every year to observe WHD, that aims to bring the world partners closer across humanitarian systems together and to work collectively for human survival. Now, World Humanitarian Day 2023, the theme is No Matter What.
World Humanitarian Day observes and recognizes the work done by humanitarians around the world by venturing into disaster-stricken regions for the human survival, well-being and self-dignity. It marks the anniversary of the attack on the UN headquarters in Baghdad. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that this year the campaign brings together the global humanitarian community to mark the 20th anniversary of the attack on the UN headquarters in Baghdad, Iraq. He salutes humanitarians and workers for their unwavering dedication to serve all people in need, no matter who, no matter where, no matter what.
Today, although humanitarians are respected around the world, they may also be targeted by those who would do them harm. This year, global humanitarian operations aim to get life-saving aid to 250 million people in 69 countries, 10 times more than at the time of the Canal Hotel bombing. Sadly, funding is far off track. As crises multiply, it is unacceptable that humanitarians are being forced to reduce aid to millions of people in need. Other challenges have also multiplied over the past 20 years.
World Humanitarian Day upholding principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality and independence, no matter what, who and where. Humanitarians always strive to provide support to those in need. Kiran Jha reporting for DD India, Delhi.
World Photography Day was observed by Photographers Society Dibrugarh at the Sahitya Sabha Bhavan in the Indian state of Assam in Dibrugarh on Saturday. Assam's government Minister for Industries and Commerce and Public Enterprises and Culture Affairs, Bimal Bora, inaugurated this photo exhibition. It was organized on the occasion, and the photo exhibition will run till Sunday. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lynn. From all of us here at Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.